Larry, Tom, and Pasal, it's will organize and.
Hello.
Yes.
There's Larry. You're muted, Larry.
So, do we now have my audio and my video?
Yeah, perfect.
Accept my apology, Professor Tom. Tom will starting in the sessions as a keynote speaker. Okay, Larry? Larry, are you okay?
So, Dr. Hannity, do you
Yes.
have my audio?
Yes, you start now. You can start with Tom. Larry, go ahead.
Wonder if he can't hear us.
It looks like he's doing something, so I don't know. Wait, Tom, please. Apology, Tom. Let me give him call again.
I have this new fancy device I created. Let me get my thing on. New fancy device I created to solve some of these problems.
Thanks, Tom.
So,
Larry? Larry, did you hear me?
so would you like me to do my presentation while these things get sorted out, Dr. Hannity?
Yes, but just give us, Professor O'Neill, just give us a few seconds. I'm afraid to start with you and he will depress or leaving the session, please. Oh, come on. Hi, Henkiel. Welcome, Henkiel, to joining us. Hi, how are you? Larry?
Larry?
He
Larry,
didn't hear anybody. We're waiting to introduce Tom. He need to start the sessions. Anybody can reach Larry?
Larry, can you hear us? Nope. I'll send him a chat. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, your voice is okay.
Yes. Hello.
There we go.
Hello.
Hi, Tom.
Hey.
Hello. Hello.
Larry, did you hear us? Yes, Larry?
Hello. Hello, Doctor. I'm having technical difficulties here. I don't have a video screen of the conference. Okay, well then let me just go ahead. Okay, so who is our first speaker here? Let me go to the program. Yes. So I want to introduce Professor Tom O'Neill. I've known Tom for probably 20 years from conferences and from other interaction that we had, and I know well the network that he has put together of incubators and his work with the University of Central Florida and in the medical innovation field in that part of the region. So I'd like to introduce him, and Tom, can you take it over?
I will take it over. So I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen with everybody. Is that working? You guys see my screen? Let's see. There
Yes.
you
go.
Which
Yeah.
screen do you see?
Yep. Works fine, Tom.
You see the big screen or the one with the
Yeah,
preview?
full screen.
Yeah,
Okay.
best practices for building an innovation ecosystem.
Yeah, as Larry said, I'm Tom Lowe. I've been doing this for a long time. It's been my passion. I'm a kind of entrepreneur turned academic turned entrepreneur. I've never really given up the fixed entrepreneurship stuff. So what I've done is live vicariously through other things I do at a university. I found a way to create incubators, as Larry said. I've also the PI on the I-Core program here at UCF, created a partnership for innovation. I work with VentureWell. I created an accelerator, 4 accelerators now as well. So, you know, it's something I really enjoy. I'm a professor of industrial engineering and management systems. And under that guise, I've introduced people to the business model canvas into the capstone class and really brought entrepreneurship into the realm of the engineering college at UCF, which is one of the largest in the country at 12,000 students. And you don't know, at UCF, we actually have 70,000 students now in our campus. Well, not on our campus, I should say, because of COVID, but you know, it's an interesting university. And when you think about Central Florida and you think about Orlando, I'm sure you think about tourism and other things, but we are trying to develop an ecosystem that's different than just tourism, even though it was kind of what made Orlando, and it's still a very large part of our economy. So one of the things I like to do, and I stole this from an economic development friend of mine, and you know what they try to do when they really want to think of how to diversify an economy is think of it in terms of bad money, neutral money, and good money. And the bad money is when you spend money outside your area and it never comes back. So you reduce the overall pool of money for a community, which reduces the wealth, reverses the economic benefits for the whole community, not just the people that are sending money out. Then there's a neutral money where, you know, the person does your yard, goes and gets their haircut by the person down there, goes to restaurants and needs stuff, and goes out and buys the yard. So that money circulates. So the way you have economic development in a region where the money is just going around and around, as you increase the velocity of money going around and around, That's one way to do it. And the best way to do it is what I call good money. And that's when you're doing trade with people from all over the world. They're bringing money and resources in your community, and it stays there. And the people that do well aren't just the people that are bringing that money in. You're increasing the pool of money for the whole community, so that it increases the velocity, increases the money around mutual money, and it slows down the leakage of money and talent, if you will, what we call the bad money. And it's an interesting way of thinking about it. And certainly the business folks will tell you all about this and how you do this, and how you create wealth by increasing the number of times that money churns through a community. And in Central Florida, one of our biggest issues is, you think of Disney, you think of KSC and other things like that, and Disney and Universal and all those places. But really, we're a small company town. 31% of the people in Central Florida or Florida General are self-employed. Another 63% work in companies that are really 2 to 9 employees. And 5% more of the establishments that create 30% of the jobs are second stage. So this stage is 10 to 99 employees. But the big companies, the one with more than 100 employees, really represent less than 1%. They're kind of a rounding error. If you talk about the companies that are over 500 people, they show up as 0.0 because they really are a rounding error. So 99.7% of the companies in Florida that create 82% of jobs consist of 100 employees or less. So, when you think about economic development, maybe you should focus on helping those companies, is what I try to do. This is similar in one sense, but we talk about innovation ecosystems, and we use the biological or agriculture examples all the time, and I'm just as guilty as anybody, but I put this together to explain to practitioners what an innovation ecosystem must look like. And one of the things I've really found true, and we all do bubble diagrams, and one thing I found in my life is whoever made the bubble diagram gets to be in the middle of the diagram. So not always a good way of looking at it. So I found if you really want to be successful and help entrepreneurs, you put the entrepreneur or the innovators in the middle of this thing. If you want to keep them there, if you want to support them, if you want to help them have a robust environment, you put them in the center and you build this infrastructure around them. With your gym, you bring it in, you fill the gap, and you create it so they really don't have a reason to leave. You start off with intellectual capital. That's again, your universities or other smart people that aren't in a university. Bringing them the new IP and the technology and the know-how to make things happen. And then you also got to have talent in the community. That's again, the people, not only the people who do the work, but the young minds that are creative and new ways of doing things. It's the CEOs and the CTOs and the CFOs. You need a pool of those kind of folks in the community to help with your innovation ecosystem to support these folks. They need money. Sometimes that's a bank loan, sometimes it's angel investments, sometimes it's strategic partnerships, but you have to have creative ways to get capital into these companies so they don't have to leave for capital. And a lot of people before we became so telecommutable, they always would leave to raise their money because the DCs wanted them within a car ride. So I think the DCs are actually learning that they don't have to be within a car ride now to invest in different companies. You need what I call advocates and champions. If you don't get the political support you need to do the work you need, you're not going to be able to fund these incubators and accelerators and things like that help companies grow. That comes in the form of your chambers and your government people, the economic development organizations within your region, and the trade associations. Do they support only the big companies, the big check writers, or will they support the innovators and entrepreneurship that are smaller? Then the last thing is, how do you help these companies really grow at the grassroots level, down the trenches? I found really one of the important things is savvy service providers in your community. The lawyers and the accountants, they have to know how to do these deals and help people grow and get acquisition advice and merging advice and the things they need to exit and create a good, happy day for everybody. You need incubators, accelerators, help companies at a certain stage. SPCs and scores, they need to be very good. You need to hold them accountable, make sure they do a great job for your community. You need a big pool of mentors, people that have been there and done that feel an obligation, if you will, to their communities to go back and give to these companies and help them grow. And that's up here, you can't really see it, but it's called economic gardening. that's a program I developed on here just to serve second stage companies. I work with the Everlow Foundation up in Pasali, Michigan. So maybe our Michigan friends are aware of them. They do a good job of helping addressing that kind of too small to be big and too big to be small set of companies. If you remember from the previous slide, in Florida, they represent about 5% of the companies, but create about 30% of the jobs. So it's a good area, not area to address. Oh, Larry got a call. Any questions on that? You know, we can come back to it later, but we're running a little behind. But this is a good way just to depict to someone that doesn't understand what you're talking about when you say an innovation ecosystem. And I like the analogy here because what you want to do is, you know, set the wagons around this so the entrepreneurs have no reason to leave or keep them captured into your community. That's where you get the most benefit. The worst thing you can do is get a company, really spend 3 or 5 years on a company and have them have to leave for some reason because your ecosystem couldn't support them in the local system. And again, I use this analogy too. These are what we have. When you think about these little droplets of rain, they're kind of the seeds you plant. A lot of companies, will fail, as we talked about, but you got to plant those seeds so some will take and grow. In our particular community, we have a strong simulation and optics and modeling. We have photonics, high density of that in Orlando. Film and digital media is a big area for us, as well as energy systems. And then strong engineering. Again, our College of Engineering in UCF alone is 12,000 students. The University of Central Florida, which used to be called Florida Technological University, was really placed there to serve the needs of Lockheed Martin and NASA. We're strategically located right between the two. So we graduate lots and lots of engineers. We're actually the #1 supplier of engineers to Lockheed Martin. Probably didn't know that. So, but then what do you do once you have all these seeds? You know, you can't just throw this stuff up in the air over the transom and hope it lands in fertile ground. So you got to create a fertile place for these new ideas, new discoveries, new ventures, new startups to be able to grow and thrive. And to do that, I find you really have to have good proactive technology transfer offices, ones that will invest in the local startup scene as well as in the big companies, not just try to do a deal with a big company and it's in another country, but really take a chance on some of these startups by doing creative ways of getting them the IP without breaking the bank for these small companies. Venture accelerators are very good. We have a thing called the Venture Lab here at UCF, which we created to help kind of vet these things, do some market research, help them understand how to hire and fire and set up the right corporate structures at the beginning. And the market research is good. We have an ICOR site. We are an ICOR site, one of the original 16. We spend a lot of time vetting companies. We do about 50 or 60 of these teams a year. And every once in a while one becomes successful. A lot of times you're just kind of doing missionary work, if you know what I mean, these things. But the whole notion is to get these scientists, out of the lab into the market with their understanding as well as their actual products. And again, the whole entrepreneurship programs, we created degrees in entrepreneurship working with the College of Engineering and the College of Business to do these things together. So it's not just one way only. When the College of Business and Engineering work together, things seem to go much better in terms of the well-rounded teams, the teams that include the scientists, discovery, and people that get, sales, marketing, and the other stuff you're going to need to get something to market. And again, savvy entrepreneurs, people will come in and team up with these teams as mentors and advisors to help them grow. We do have business planning competitions and jousts and pitch competitions and demo days and things like that. And not only do they help the companies, they bring awareness to the community that it's important that you have a vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem that people can come out and support, volunteer, spend some time, get the energy of your community up as well as that within your university. And then so again, once these things sprung and have a little bit of momentum, they're still young and fragile. And this is the image I like to use is, one guy walking down the street can crush these things. So what do you do to help them grow? You need a good SBDC. The SCORE chapters are very good. We have tech associations that do events and training and sessions. Advanced manufacturing MEP centers here we have actually will help with training and market research to help these companies get better. We have an incubator. We had one of the largest. We had 8 different sites around this community, trying to be the resource for where people go. But the incubator, it was where they can stay for the first few years and get the support and the camaraderie of working together. The peer learning is always good, the water cooler conversations, but a rigorous program, not just a place, as Larry will tell you. An incubator is more of a method and a process than a place. As long as you understand it, you put them through a program and hold them accountable with their milestones and delivers, they do great. With the university, one thing you can do is really help team up interns, with these small companies. The interns usually will get to do good, valuable work, helps them with their degree, helps them have a more valued education. But these companies get access to high quality talent. A lot of times they'll end up going working for the startup if it's a good match, if you do a good job on the front end of matching the interns with the companies. That always works well. And again, if it doesn't work out, there's no hard feelings. They can go different ways. Seed and gap funding, not only for the technology for help these companies, but help the companies get started. Non-diluted funding is always really good if you figure out how to do that. UF and UCF have a seed fund where we send this money to folks, and you don't have to pay it back. A lot of these Acceler programs will have an investment along with a short duration program to get them through to a certain level, Y Combinator and things like that. I think you're more familiar with. We have one here. Actually, some energy companies have that. There's one in South Florida that I work with. They provide $100,000 for a 12-month engagement with these companies to help them become successful. So seek those folks out. Again, non-dilutive funding. I like the SBR route. If you're not familiar with that, Small Business Innovation Research Program they have in the U.S. Companies that are seriously tech oriented and have a problem that will solve some agencies' issues. They can get some funding to do that, and it's non-dilutive and it's good investment for the company. A good way to seed the initial few years of the company. And then this is like the second stage, having research parks for these companies to move out of the incubator and go into. Actually, you have to have a place for these companies to go to. One of the things I found, there's a small community here that wanted an incubator real bad, so we set one up for them. But when the companies graduated, there was actually no place within the city limits for these companies to move to. So they were moving about a mile down the road, but it was on the other side of the city line, so they weren't happy with that. So you got to think that through if you're going to have an incubator. Where they graduate to, is there places for them so they don't leave your particular communities? Then you got to start working on your capital, whether it's the connections with some other region that's rich in capital and investors, or do you develop your own? I found that we created at UCF an angel network, and it's worked out pretty well. My advice for that is hire an angel or engage an angel investor to help create your angel investors, because they're already in the club. It's easier for them to recruit people if they have money in the game as well. Professional associations, it's very good to have a robust association repertoire in your community, so these people in optics or modeling simulation or other things can go, they can meet, they can cannibalize each other's employees and staff, but also it's a good place to know there's a critical mass of anything in a region by getting people together, learning from each other. Sometimes they're competition, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they work together, sometimes they don't. We have a lot of that stuff in the space sector here, where people will cooperate sometimes, and sometimes they're competing with each other. Co-opetition, I think is the term used for that now. And then again, support the very big companies. Keep them here. One of the worst things we did in this region, not to share our very laundry, but we recruited somebody, that's been an economic development technique for a long time. We got them here and we thought we were done because we gave them some money to move here, and we didn't do anything else to kind of nurture them while they got here. They stayed here for as long as the money was in the bank, and when they ran out of money, they left. So that's not a good way to do it. So if you're going to recruit companies or really attract new business into a community, make sure that you can support their needs in terms of workforce, the quality of life. A lot of people will leave a region just at the K through 12 school system. They view it as not being as good enough for their kids to grow up in. So keep that in mind as you grow through this thing. And also, work on, have a neutral third party, and universities are good for that. They can help you understand, what you really are. What your strengths are, whether your economy is growing or subtracting. Give yourself a hard look at yourselves once in a while. I found one of the best examples of that is that Institute for Competitive Analysis up in North Carolina. They get together and they have researchers, and they really look at their community, and they close the doors and they give themselves an honest picture of what they are, and it's not the Chamber of Commerce stuff, but it's what you need to know about your community. And again, managing talent, you know, most folks of a certain size will have these career force and the workforce development boards and stuff. Good to keep that there. Good to have them well connected to your university so that the programs offered in university match really well what the needs of the industry sector are in the community in terms of workforce and graduating people that can work in the local region. This is another way of looking at it. This is the pyramid example I like to do. So if you really want to build a strong innovation-based economy, you got to have these pillars, and I say it's top research and faculty, tech-savvy entrepreneurs. Industry cluster is good if you can put one together. Most people can't be everything to all people, so focus on some sector. And here we really put a lot of effort on modeling and simulation. We'll go to Washington every year to defend against BRAC and other ways they might take our modeling and simulation sector away from us. Work on your workforce, business services. And once you create this strong platform where you have I guess an aggregation of expertise in some area or center of excellence, and then you can do things, again, more research will come in, you can attract investors and things, and you can really get good at creating IP that can be used for those seeds that we talked about in the beginning. And then what's your strategy? Think about incubators and commercialization and startups. And then you get economic development, and the worst thing economic developers can do in my mind is try to start here and not build or have an understanding of how important the underlying foundation is to make a strong economy. And it does take a village. I think partnerships is the key. I think that Jim Baker, I like the fact that he has a strategy to develop partnerships outside the region to fill their gaps. I think it's an excellent way to do this. But you need this consistency of purpose. You all got to be kind of marching in step to get this done. And a lot of regions do it out of an act of desperation. You know, Austin when the oil went away, or in Detroit when the car business was in ruins, and all these things. You know, they'll put people together. But we have the problem in Florida, but we're not really broke because we always have tourism, and we figure it'll come back or won't come back, but we have that. So, you know, that consistency of purpose isn't as easy to develop when you don't have a big tragedy or some trauma to your local system that you got to rally together to fix. So think about in terms of, keeping things marching forward. It's always good to engage your engineering and business together. Again, innovation-focused economic development. Again, we do that for the simple reason, usually these kind of companies pay more salaries or create more wealth. They bring in outside capital more. And it's a good type of business to have in your community. Not that the other ones aren't good as well, but this one really helps spur on an economy in a particular region in ways that other companies, and this brings in the good money we talked about at the beginning of this presentation. This is my cute little slide I like to end on. So if you do this thing, it becomes sustainable. If you keep creating intellectual capital, and if you keep seeding this ground and keeping it fertile, and you create doing small, and you bring students, and it kind of feeds on itself. And one of the reasons I like to do this is, just don't stop supporting any of these sectors. You need them all working together. You need businesses, you need small businesses, you need startups, you need second stage companies. You need a constant flow of intellectual capital coming to these people to help them do it. Again, it doesn't need to be science, it could be other kind of things, whatever your particular sector is that you're doing, and keep it growing. And again, don't stop funding an SBDC because you want to start an incubator. Figure out how to do these things together, how to make them work together. You'll be much better off. And with that, I think I got 9 seconds left. I'll turn it back to Larry or however they're going to work this thing. But thank you for your listening to me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Many thanks, Professor Tom O'Neill, for your great presentation. And we hope so, Professor Larry, they controlled the problem about the PC. He have some problems in visualize us. I think he's now in contact with the technical support company.
You get to be Larry then, I think.
Yes. Very great presentation, Professor Tom. I like it so much. You give a very good conclusion about the best practices.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I think he is still in our timing is 4:40. Yes, I think we can introduce Professor Pasali. He is from the UN. He can present for us today best practices and entrepreneurship ecosystem. Can start Professor Pasali, because unfortunately Professor Larry have technical problems. He is now in contact with the company. You can start your presentation to catch up the schedule.
Okay.
I did.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my.
Okay, now I have it.
Sorry for. Can you hear me? I'm so sorry. It's that I had to quit Zoom to share the screen. I'm using on a different computer. Can you see? Is it okay now? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Selçuk Pasali, not yet a professor, hopefully down the line. I hold a PhD on development economics, and I'm an economic affairs officer at the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, particularly at the entrepreneurship section. It was great to hear the previous keynote speech. I'd like to bring a bit of our experience at the UN from a global perspective, and basically for the support that we're providing to the member states. So at the United Nations, on this particular issue, our work is guided by the resolution of the General Assembly on entrepreneurship for sustainable development, which recognizes the important contribution entrepreneurship makes to sustainable and inclusive development. So on the economic, social, and environmental side. I think today this resolution remains valid. It was adopted in 2018. A new resolution is in the making by the member states to be adopted very soon. And in the times of COVID-19, this resolution remains highly relevant in terms of guiding a inclusive, resilient, and green recovery on the backs of innovative entrepreneurs. We see that there has been a lot of short-term support, but we are more focusing on the longer-term approach. And I'll today share with you a few of our findings from our research when we reported back to the General Assembly. So we know from several studies that about 15% of adult population are engaged in entrepreneurial activities early stage. We don't know how COVID-19 will impact this. There are positive forces and negative forces, but we know that some of the groups in our society are particularly hit hard. We call them usually the vulnerable groups. So you have women, youth, migrants and refugees, rural dwellers, people with disabilities, who are usually operating in the informal sector, and they need support, but they're often overseen. Even in the formal sector, we estimate that firms managed by women were 27% more likely to file for bankruptcy at the peak of the pandemic compared to male managers. And this was something similar for the youth also. And among firms, we see that the MSMEs, micro, small, medium-sized enterprises, are always hit much harder than than large enterprises on every account due to various reasons. Of course, having access to finance, access to technology, versatile business plans, and the mere fact that they're often in sectors that are too vulnerable to lockdowns. So all the work that we've seen among the UN entities, including International Labour Organization, International Trade, ITC, and ILO, we see that there is always this issue of MSMEs being hit much harder, and therefore the startups and also entrepreneurs hit very hard by the COVID-19. We track the support measures that member states have been giving to firms, to entrepreneurs, and they're largely on short-term, debt support through loan guarantees or employment support, or postponing taxes and social security contributions. All these things are working much better in developed countries, where there's a bit more capacity by member states to support their firms. But when you look at the developing countries, this is not there, and they're really oftentimes left to their own devices. At UNCTAD, we're focusing more on the long term, and our entrepreneurship policy framework guides our approach in supporting member states. And our framework is based on 6 pillars, which are on the screen. We basically help member state come up with an entrepreneurship strategy, a national entrepreneurship strategy, to boost the ecosystem in an inclusive and sustainable way through policy options, tangible recommendations on all these 6 pillars. So you have optimizing regulatory environment, enhancing entrepreneurship education and skills. This is particularly important for the 4th industrial revolution and preparing the future entrepreneurs with a proper mindset. You have facilitation of innovation and technology exchange. Again, in COVID-19, we're seeing there's a lot of demand on this for participating in the digital economy. Then we have improving access to finance, which is critical for all types of entrepreneurs, vulnerable or high impact, high growth startups, which are in need of sizable financial assets in the beginning to kickstart their operations without much return in the short term. Then we have improving access to markets, of course, at local, national. We know that many entrepreneurs are operating at the local level, local markets. So we are trying to give member states ideas and policies on how to improve their access to national, regional, and international levels. And finally, raising awareness, ensuring that people choose entrepreneurship as a career path in the future, and then having strong networks among entrepreneurs so that they support one another and learn from one another and engage with one another in business. When we reported to the General Assembly on the implementation of the resolution entitled Entrepreneurship for Sustainable Development, we made we captured 5 cross-cutting issues that should receive urgent attention by the member states. So I've listed them here, and I'm going to take you through them with some examples, both during COVID-19 and pre-COVID-19 periods, because we covered basically 2018-19 period. But these are things that we have been discussing also. There are some promising initiatives which are waiting to be evaluated for us to consider them a best practice and think about how to import it to different contexts. So the first one is comprehensive and holistic policy. So here we really promote comprehensive national entrepreneurship strategies, which should aim for a cohesive plan of action. For example, a recent example is from Ecuador, where the National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Law was passed, though we are still waiting for some of the policies to follow from this. So it's a promising initiative for now to be seen. Malaysia in 2019 was the star, I think, in this. They introduced a national entrepreneurship policy, a very good policy document with tangible monitoring and evaluation mechanisms built in. So we're looking forward to their midline review of how their work is going on and how they're supporting vulnerable groups, especially the bottom 40%, as they call it. Another example was from Ghana. Now, as UNCTAD, we support member states through the entrepreneurship policy framework to come up with their entrepreneurship strategies so that they can build an inclusive and sustainable entrepreneurship ecosystem. Or, they usually have the ecosystem, but it's not sufficiently inclusive, and it's not built on the sustainable principles. So we implemented EPF in several countries, and there are also some others as listed down for where it's ongoing. It's usually in Africa and in Latin America. I wanted to share one insight on the importance of inclusion, especially from the perspective of gender. Here you see on the x-axis how gender equal a ecosystem is, and then on the y-axis the share of enterprises owned by women, for example. So there's a positive. The dots are the countries. So you see a positive association there, which tells us that it's crucial that women are the biases or the gender discriminatory policies are eliminated from the regulations when you're optimizing the regulatory framework, for example, to boost the participation of women and moving them away from the informal to the formal sector. In digitalization, here our concern is that our recent estimates based on Global Entrepreneurship Monitor database is that less than 5% of entrepreneurs are can be thought of as innovative entrepreneurs using latest technologies. So clearly we need a boost here, and COVID-19 kind of helped to reprioritize with many countries, particularly on the upper middle income and high income countries, to support the startups, use the latest technologies, not only for finding a solution to the outbreak, but also for longer term approach.
Start my video.
And then before the COVID-19, we also recognized that some startup acts happened in various countries where you can see that support was provided to innovative startups, and there's been some positive impact there which can be replicated in other countries. I'll skip this, but this was just to show that small and micro enterprises are often missed in using innovative and digital tools as simple as email and website, but also foreign technology and quality certifications. At UNCTAD, we believe a lot in building a strong entrepreneurship mindset. We have the Emprotect program, a behavioral approach to instilling entrepreneurial competencies in people. And we see that some interesting work has been done in several countries, introducing soft skills, for example, or behavioral, the competencies that are required to become a successful entrepreneur. So we support countries in this area also, and the resolution I mentioned actively encourages countries to follow similar training programs for entrepreneurs, and this could be quite important in recovery from COVID-19 when people are moving away from wage employment to self-employment. And these type of things, we see some differences between entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs, irrespective of their level of education. These type of soft skills trainings can really help improve the outlook of entrepreneurs about how confident they are, if they fear failure, and if they're well within the networks. For us to consider any initiative a best practice, we look at rigorous academic impact evaluations, and here there are a few examples that I wanted to share where entrepreneurship-related policies had positive impact on several of the Sustainable Development Goals in line with Agenda 2030. On Goal 1, for example, the M-Pesa, the digital finance tool money transfer service, helped reduce poverty through entrepreneurial activities, particularly by women, for example. Entrepreneurship education in Sweden had very long-term impact on the students who enrolled before high school even. Then you have a few other things like the last one, the Startup Act in Italy, which was found very impactful on innovative young startups, and it's currently being repeated in Senegal and in Tunisia. And then we have a few more startup acts coming up in Mali and Ghana. Africa is quite convinced with these startup acts, and we hope that similar positive impact will be found there. Finally, here, I think what we've learned also, not only in terms of member states taking action on entrepreneurship policies, but also basically all the stakeholders in the ecosystem. How important it is to have the stronger coordination. For us, promoting and developing entrepreneurship is a major task that no single institution at national level can carry out individually. We see how vibrant the ecosystems are and how dynamic they are with stakeholders from different sectors. But often there's that lack of coordination, unfortunately. So our approach is usually trying to bring all those stakeholders together through several workshops where we can identify the challenges in the country following our framework and offer and agree on a set of policy actions. Clearly, there should be an institution in any country to be in the front seat to drive the process for the coordination. But we need to have a constant communication and flow of information between this lead institution and all the other stakeholders in the ecosystem on a regular basis. And this has been done in some developed countries, particularly for recovery from COVID-19. A few European countries have achieved this, and it was for the first time that they, as soon as they introduced a policy, they started monitoring it first, and then evaluating it to see if it's working or not. Because obviously with COVID-19, we were in uncharted territory. We didn't know what will work, if it will work. So this was, I think, a good practice and a good lessons learned that we need to constantly monitor the policies and evaluate them. This can also happen through stronger coordination. We also see how rich public-private partnerships have become in the past couple of years, in light of the Agenda 2030, where there's a huge financing gap, particularly for infrastructure investment, for example. But now we're moving more towards, this green entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, where the public-private partnerships can really help deliver inclusive and sustainable development and build resilience in the ecosystem. And here, for us as international organizations, we are also, I think, more than ever coordinating our activities together at different levels, led by the country teams. And when we deliver projects, we are delivering as one, more than ever, that I can say. And this is also crucial for not to duplicate anything and not to leave any stakeholder behind. Once we get together, things work really much better, and we can be much more impactful in coordination with the national stakeholders and the national governments. So I think in a nutshell, these are the things that we have learned in the recent past in boosting the entrepreneurship ecosystem. Our work continues, particularly with an emphasis on the vulnerable groups. We are very active on migrant and refugee entrepreneurship. We take note of the recent good news on COVID-19 vaccine coming from the two Turkish couple, partly the BioNTech, their company, two migrants who arrived and became entrepreneurial in Germany, and hopefully it will bring us good news. So we keep focusing on the vulnerable groups and ensuring that they're included in the entrepreneurship ecosystems, so that we can attain our shared global goals. So with that, I'll thank you very much for your kind attention, and I look forward to listening and learning from our colleagues. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation. It was very interesting. I think we'll move along now to Lynn, are you there for us?
Sure am.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Just a brief introduction of Lynn. I've known Lynn for many years. I won't say
more than two.
Yeah, it will age both of us, but I visited Lynn and her colleagues in Atlanta, and I can see it in the background. They have an amazing enterprise, a lot of public-private partnerships, and some very interesting programs that I'm going to let her discuss, and some of the examples of the work that they've done and what have you. But thank you so much for being here, and go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, Larry. That was a very kind introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my presentation. I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see if I can get this done okay. Hopefully that's showing my presentation.
Not yet.
There we go.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, perfect.
Is that good?
It's full screen. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So my focus is going to be a bit more on university connectivity in the ecosystem. Since we are Georgia Tech and we are in the middle of downtown Atlanta, I really wanted to address all of the partnerships that feed into the ecosystem. I know Tom did a great job of explaining the ecosystem and how it all operates. And I'm going to show a little bit more connectivity between the university and the ecosystem. So that's kind of my area of focus. Let's see here. Go here. Okay, so a little bit about Georgia Tech. I'm going to try to, I have a lot of charts in my presentation. I'm probably going to skip over some of them, but I wanted to have that information to you in case you were very interested in the details. So the details are in there, but I'm going to kind of skip over the details and kind of stick to a much more higher level explanation. Georgia Tech was founded back in 1885. That was right after our Civil War. The South was very agricultural and the North was very industrial. So when we went to go rebuild the South, we needed a whole bunch of engineers to rebuild the South. So Georgia Tech was founded to develop engineers to industrialize the South. So our roots are very, very intertwined with industry, which is not the case for most universities. Most universities, you know, they're strictly learning places. Georgia Tech was strictly a working place. And in this picture, we'll show you the students in their work outfits, as well as their going to school outfits back in 1885. So they learned a half a day and worked a half a day. A little bit about Atlanta and Georgia Tech, you know, 6 million population. It's an enormous city. We have the world's biggest airport. We have global centers such as CNN and Delta and UPS, and of course, Coca-Cola. We have the third largest concentration of Fortune 500 companies in the United States. Georgia Tech, the enrollment, we have lots of students. How's that? Our rankings, we're #1 producer of female and minority engineers in the United States. And I'm very, very proud of that. Having been a female engineer coming out of the University of Miami 100 years ago, I'm really, really encouraged by Georgia Tech's focus on addressing women and minorities as populations that need engineering degrees. We were #1 for best producing startup talent, which we have been working at for a long time. So I'm really happy to hear that. And of course, we were #4 for undergraduate engineering. So those are our bragging rights. That's my brag page. A little bit about the size of us, $1.8 billion. It's pretty big. We have an enormous amount of sponsored research. And only 16% of our funding actually comes from the state of Georgia, even though we are a state university. So I think that's really important, because a long time ago, it was a heck of a lot higher number, but we have been able to wean ourselves off of the state funding and get more sponsorship and more research. That's why our research budget has just grown exponentially, even in the last 5 years. Okay, so industry collaboration. Back in 2001, this is what the ecosystem around Georgia Tech and Metro Atlanta looked like. As you can see, I mean, 3 programs. We had our incubator, the Advanced Technology Development Center Incubator, which, oh, by the way, was funded and started by the state of Georgia. And then we had research. Of course, everyone has research at their university, just about. And then Capstone Design was for undergraduate students, and it was part of their engineering program. Fast forward to today, and this is what we have. An enormous amount of programs addressing all different demographics and different populations. So we everything from faculty to undergrads to grad students to the community. As you notice, our community piece over on the right-hand side has grown exponentially compared to what it was in 2001. And then of course on the y-axis, you'll see we go from education all the way up to scaling your company. So we have over time developed these programs because of demand. We listened to our customers. We kept asking the entrepreneurs, what do they need? And then we kept looking at what the entrepreneurs need, because what the entrepreneurs say they need and what they really need sometimes are not the same thing. And that's really important to understand. You need to know your community and its strengths and weaknesses. Just a couple of bullet points here about the innovation ecosystem. We work very hard to instill entrepreneurial confidence in our students and faculty. And at first it was sort of kind of scary, especially for our faculty. But now with I-Corps, we were one of the founding universities of I-Corps, us and University of Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. With I-Corps coming on board, it changed the whole mindset of the faculty. It really did. It took a while. I mean, it was kind of scary, but once again, we had industrial roots. So I think we got away with a lot because people already understood that we were training engineers to go out into the field and become a sustainable workforce. So we focused on interdisciplinary research. That's the other piece I think is really significant, is we cross-pollinated an awful lot of different expertises that normally would not have been cross-pollinated. And we are very open to the idea of cross-pollination. Once again, it didn't happen overnight. I mean, it's been a long time. I've been with Georgia Tech almost 20 years, and I've watched it grow significantly in that time frame. Innovation neighborhoods. I'll address that a little bit later on in the presentation, but we're not in a bubble. We're not by ourselves. We all live, work, and play in the Metro Atlanta area. So it's not just students and faculty that Georgia Tech focuses on. It is our community, and they're very dedicated to the community. The organization I'm in is all focused on economic development. We're the only university organization that has all of their economic development initiatives all under the same umbrella. And that's the Enterprise Innovation Institute. And that's where I reside. And anything to do with economic development initiatives, they're all under the same umbrella, which really helps with a lot of collaborative efforts with the city and local government and communities and universities and you name it. That's the collaborative key point. That's the entry point for the rest of the people to come into the campus. The other thing I thought was really important to mention is flexible contracting and intellectual property terms for industry. Once again, we're industrial focused. So we want our technologies to get out into the community and make a better life for everyone. So we had to be really, really realistic about what's going to happen with our research. We're not a federal lab, or well, we do have some federal lab research, but we're more applied research. We are much more on the applied side. So it has to go somewhere from here. It just doesn't get patented and put on a shelf. I mean, that doesn't do anybody any good. Moving on to the ecosystem, of course, these are some of the components of our ecosystem, incubators and accelerators. Of course, we have corporate innovation centers, which came about 7 years ago. They started popping up. And then if you notice the buildings behind me, that is Georgia Tech property there. And let's see, right back there, actually, where my finger is right there, that's where our corporate innovation centers are residing. And right across the street on this side is Georgia Tech's Scheller College of Business. So they're adjacent to campus. They're not on campus. It's a public-private partnership. And if you can see that little building way in the back behind me, that's the old Biltmore Hotel, which they have converted over to businesses that have graduated out of our incubator. And now they're tech teens, for a better lack of a description. And now once they move out of our incubator, they have space to move to right close to campus again, to keep that community, the entrepreneurial community close together, to be able to support each other. Back to my presentation, the corporate innovation centers I just covered. We have a lot of professional education programs. So corporate and executive education programs. You never stop learning, right? You're always learning. So we try to make sure that we have content that's applicable to our corporate partners and any other corporates who really want to learn more about tech innovation. In neighborhoods, Tech Square, what you see behind me is Tech Square. And our interdisciplinary research, I touched on that earlier. Cross-pollination is extremely important to develop new research and new technologies. Here are some of our corporate innovation centers that are physically located, like I said, behind me, or close in the area. And the reason they're located there is because they want access to our students. So our students can be interns or work after hours in these innovation centers. They're small, and all they are is little places where the corporations put their problems, and they hire people to solve those problems. And they purposely keep them away from the large corporate headquarters or corporate manufacturing facilities and things like that, because they really, really want to just focus on solving problems. And once it gets to a point where they think it's an option to solve a problem, then it goes over into their big research or manufacturing facilities for prototyping and along those lines. But it's easy to get access to students that way. Okay, so you can see our little square, Georgia Tech, and our little bubble and where we live in life. But we couldn't be where we are today if we didn't have our partners. And every single one of these components mentioned in my little web here are extremely important to having a healthy and sustainable ecosystem. Everybody plays a very important role. I do want to call attention to the Georgia Research Alliance. That is a state-funded entity that encourages creative research. That has provided investment funding. It's also provided incentive funding to draw in professors who are experts in a specific field. And if it's a specific field that we're looking to grow in an industry focus, it provides funding that the university wouldn't be able to afford to be able to do those things, and also a huge connection point. Of course, associations, we have the Technology Association of Georgia, the very healthy, robust entrepreneurial association. And you can see local government, Chamber of Commerce, entrepreneurs, investors, and industry practitioners. Everyone is a part of this ecosystem. And that's really what I want you to take from this chart. Best practices start with small steps. Share your success stories to influence a culture of change. I think that to me was one of the most important bullets. I should have highlighted it because we do a lot of international incubation assessments or innovation assessments. And being all over the world, everyone has different cultures and different behaviors and different viewpoints. In some cultures, industry and universities should never cross and touch each other. They should totally be separate. And it's a detriment to that culture to have that opinion, but I understand where it comes from. So you try to work around it and try to figure out what's the best way to make it a win-win for everybody. And the way you do that is to slowly change the culture and see the benefit of the partnership. And, you know, a partnership is a partnership. You've got a set of rules and you abide by those rules. So you might have to get local government to be willing to change those rules a little bit in order to change your culture and be more open to innovation. Incubation, of course, everyone knows about incubation. That can be done to death. Start working with the corporate sector through professional education. You know, we have a lot of executives that come through our professional education programs every year. And we squeak our entrepreneurship training in there as best we can. Almost every single one of our colleges at the university right now has a component of entrepreneurship in it. That was not the case even 5 years ago, but it is a very strong component of a Georgia Tech student's education now. And they're going to take that with them wherever they go. They're going to graduate, they're going to go on to a corporation, and they're going to have entrepreneurship in their head. Even if they are not practicing entrepreneurs themselves, they understand the value of entrepreneurship, and they can respect it and encourage it. And I think that's, you know, trying to get in the door and understand that. I think this is one of the best ways. We'll skip over here. Overview. Okay, just I'm kind of going to skip through these, but these statistics just blew me away, and I thought, I hope it'll have some value to you, because it frightened me when I saw it. Over 70% of global R&D is funded by 7 countries. That's it, 7. You can count them on 2 hands. Thank God we only have 2 hands. A percentage of gross domestic product is a good measure of research funding levels. Governments, and this holds true based on my education as well. Governments handle basic research. They start the spark, have no idea where it's going to go. Industry and universities pick it up and run with it and develop it and do much more of the applied research piece of it. And then the universities, on the other hand, and hopefully industry, is now doing the entrepreneurial thing and saying, okay, well, where does this apply? What problem does it solve? So that's kind of the continuum that it goes through. The other, another thing I want to point out to you here is the talent pool. You need the talent. You need to encourage that education and the researchers. Research, and this says majority of funding is for the researcher's time, and that is true. But you really have to have talent that stays, not that comes and goes, in order to have a sustainable, healthy ecosystem. I'm going to pop this in here and just give you 2 sentences on this. I thought this was really interesting. It's an example. It's called the MIT dollar, if you're not familiar with it. It basically just shows where a US dollar, from a percentage standpoint, where the money goes when it goes into government and industry research. Same thing with talent. This is just another explanation, more detail about that point I was trying to make about talent. And then again, it goes back to those 7 countries. And here we go. Here's the 7 countries with innovation and patents. This is 2018 filings, but it's only one measure of innovation. That's the only other thing I want you to take away from this. You can, you know, digest this at your leisure. Of course, circling back around again, our industry collaboration. I mean, we've been collaborating with industry since we were born, so it's not new to us. It's just part of who we are. And these are just components of it and suggestions if you want to advance your industry collaboration. Corporate engagement programs. I don't know how much time I have left, so I don't want to overdo it. I could talk forever. Corporate engagement programs. I'm just going to zip through these a little quickly. Near term, these are the things you can do with corporate engagement near term from a university standpoint. So if you're looking to broaden your relationship with industry and develop a more healthy, robust research program at your university that ends in entrepreneurship and startups, this is kind of the roadmap. Near term, you want to recruit students. Students. I know I'm saying that a lot. You need technical assistant, you need professional and executive education for them to understand the value of entrepreneurs. Advisory boards are always a good idea. And of course, your vendor relationships. You're going to need your raw materials. So you need to have healthy relationships with your vendors. So when you do hit it big, you're able to scale up quite quickly. Long-term innovation sourcing, development office. I'll cover development office a little more in detail. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Sorry about that.
So Lynn, we're running just a little bit long, so.
Okay. Okay. Let's see, we covered that. We'll go right back to my 6 bullet points. University research and collaboration between academia and industry has never been more important than it is today. Once again, each country has unique characteristics, strengths, and opportunities. You need to know what those are. You can't just make believe that you think you are. You have to really have an independent knowledge of what your assets and liabilities are in your community. And that gives you the roadmap to start. Investment in public resources is critical for scientific R&D. University, we already covered those, long, short, long terms. And any new initiatives must be in alignment with the university's strategic goals. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Lynn. I learned things that I didn't know before you started. So that's always a good thing.
Thank you.
So I have a couple questions, I guess. One of them would be, you mentioned some of the larger companies that you have there in the Atlanta area, but is your interaction more with large companies, or is it more with small to medium size? And does it lean towards manufacturing versus technology? Just what is the profile of the partnerships that you have with private sector?
Great question. And the answer is all the above. From a research standpoint, it's probably the larger corporations because they have the money to invest. But my EI squared is what we call ourselves, the Enterprise Innovation Institute. We have all of our economic development programs under the same umbrella. So we have the Minority Business Development Center, the Minority Business Manufacturing Center, and those are for scale-up companies. We have Venture Lab, which is strictly Georgia Tech research. We have the ATDC, which deals with startups. We also have other programs such as an energy program, the Southeast Trade Program. So we can address all levels of companies in whatever stage they're in, basically due to our structure. So they come usually, I'm usually the first point where people come in, and based on their characteristics, we point them in the right direction to which program is best for them.
Okay, thank you. Tom O'Neill, are you still with us? I guess not. I had a question for Tom. You mentioned incubation a little bit. Could you talk just a little bit about that, and keeping in mind that some of our people listening in are from countries that are developing incubators or incubator networks or innovation networks. What are some of the things that you've learned relative to incubation and acceleration and those?
Okay, I'm gonna give you my honest 20-year experience of working with incubation programs. If you build it, they won't come. It's always kind of everyone, especially your economic development people, your local government people say, oh, unemployment's up, we need to have an incubator, we need to start companies. That's not how it works. You need to encourage entrepreneurship in your community starting in kindergarten, and make sure that your population knows how to do entrepreneurship and be creative and encourage creation. And from that, I mean, people can gather anywhere. We worked with a community where all the entrepreneurs were hanging out at a bike shop because there was no place in town, but that was a good local spot in town. And all the entrepreneurs would gather once a week on Thursday nights at the bike shop. And when we went through and did the assessment and found that out, we tried to find a locale where they could continue to meet and still end up putting in like a maker space and things like that. So it's kind of grassroots, and you know, universities, I think, should have some type of a maker space, or we have several of them on campus, and actually most of them have been started by student activists. So you just never know.
Yeah, I've experienced that too. With I guess the precept maybe is not build and they will come, but what is it that you will build to facilitate their coming? And it may not be a bricks and mortar, especially in the environment we're currently in, with the pandemic, which has changed the nature of entrepreneurship and networking and what have you. And it's, I think, raised some opportunities too that we didn't have in the past. So
absolutely. So let me give you a quick analogy. You have a sidewalk. You go to you have a sidewalk going to your house or someplace. So the local government puts in this, really nice concrete sidewalk, but everybody walks this path, and eventually the path becomes this dirt path, and everybody uses that and no one uses the sidewalk. Well, if the government did the research to begin with and realized that the people wanted to walk this way, not that way, they could have saved themselves money putting in that sidewalk there and put it where it really belonged, is where the people needed. So discovery, and entrepreneurs are your customers. Yeah,
that's a very apt analogy. I know that having worked with planners and designers and what have you, they call those paths of convenience. And when you're standing up in a building on campus and you can see where the students depart from the sidewalk and take a shortcut, well, that tells you that maybe you should be designing towards what the need is rather than what you think the path is. So,
right.
Well, thank you so much for your insights. I see our on deck circle includes Mike Molnar. Dr. Hannity, I don't know if you're on, but I have my program showing that that there's a couple people that aren't on deck yet. So Ed Morrison and Julie Lenzer were coming up here. But
Julie's here.
Oh, okay. So Ed, is Ed there? Ed, yep. Okay, well, good. We're on track here. Well, I'm going to introduce Ed here. Ed and I go back a long ways too. That I did call on my network of friends and colleagues and people that I've worked with in the past. So Ed, I know well from his days down at Purdue and the program that he put together that has evolved and matured and improved. And I'm not going to try to define that, but just say that Ed has been part of the ecosystem for many years. And not only is he a practitioner, but he also helps create practitioners. So I thought I'd give you that short introduction and let you go ahead and move forward with your presentation.
Thank you, Larry. I'm going to quickly share my screen. And I would enjoy the opportunity to spend time with you, Larry. And this is in your group. Larry, is, if you know, is a major leader in our work in ecosystem building in universities. So I want to provide you an overview of how we approach ecosystem building from a practitioner and a researcher viewpoint. And I'm going to talk to you about strategic doing, and I'll give you an introduction to that. But first, let me give you a couple of other introductions. This is Sam White. He's professor at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. He came to us at Purdue and said, how do we build a water cluster in Milwaukee? This is a dean of a business school at the University of North Alabama, where we currently have an agile strategy lab. And he asked us, how do we create a startup ecosystem? Ernest Andrade is a city employee who works in Charleston, South Carolina. And years ago, he came to me and said, how do I build a digital economy in Charleston, South Carolina? And then here's Ubaldo Cordova, who's a an impressive guy. He's a chemical engineer from Caltech. He's at the University of Puerto Rico, and he approached us and came after the Hurricane Maria and said, how can you help us rebuild the Puerto Rican economy? Well, one of the challenges that all of these situations have is this, and I'm going to walk through this graphic for you. On the y-axis, or the vertical axis, what we're seeing is that our problems that we have to address are becoming increasingly complex. These are challenges that have no simple solution, and indeed it's hard to define the problem even. And then across the horizontal axis, the x-axis, what we have is the increasing complexity of collaboration. And you saw that today in some of the presentations. How do we get all of these different actors within an ecosystem to work together to collaborate? And in that gray area up in the upper right, that's where our work at Purdue and now at the University of North Alabama has been focused, which is the development of a new open source discipline, which we call strategic doing. And I'm going to share with you some of the insights of what we've learned over the years that we've developed this approach, and now that we teach this approach. But the challenge, of course, is this, that we're facing these complex adaptive systems, these complex systems that continuously move. And the old approaches to strategy, how do we decide where do we put our resources? Those old approaches don't really work anymore, because indeed both the problems are becoming more complex and the collaborations are becoming more complex. So let me take you into what happened about a month or two after Sam White came to us and we ran a workshop for him. What you see here is within the Milwaukee water cluster, all of these different entities started to connect around 4 critical focus areas. So you had a conversation where people started to converge around what their shared opportunities were. And indeed, now if you go on the web and look at the Water Council in Milwaukee is a global water hub. It's taken about 10 years to build it, but it's there. Now, about 6 years ago, I'm going to take you into North Alabama, which is quite a different environment. It's a rural community. Again, here's where the University of North Alabama is. And the question was, how do we build a startup ecosystem in North Alabama? We're not Atlanta. We don't have all these resources, but what do we actually do? How do we do this? And here what we see is, again, a whole range of different entities starting to work together and new ideas popping up. I want to take you into the process by which this ecosystem evolved and to underscore the fact that ecosystems evolve over time. They take time to build, and there are some identifiable stages to the development of ecosystems. First, the conversation has to shift. This is the new narrative. This is where you're going. This is the stories that we were told by the previous presenters are so important, and they are. You want to start telling these new stories about where the future of your economy is going. A core team starts to form to build the ecosystem. An ecosystem is not driven by one person. It's even not necessarily driven by one organization, but a core team of people form. And as they learn how to do strategy in open, loosely connected networks, a strategy emerges, an agenda for collaborative investment emerges, and these initial projects launch. And as value is created from these initial projects, which some of them are very small to begin with, as those start to pay off, the interest in the ecosystem, the resources of the ecosystem start to grow. So let me take you one step into the detail again. We cannot design ecosystems. Ecosystems are complex systems, but we can design and we can conduct the platforms on which ecosystems grow. So I'll share with you the platforms that we've been using and how we think about a portfolio of collaborations and the logic underneath that portfolio. So first and foremost, as our previous presenter talked about, we need brainpower, talent. You need to have the talent in order to compete globally. So talent is critically important. That's why universities are critically important. We need to take that talent and we need to convert that talent into valuable ideas, and ideas are created through organizations. These are companies, these are existing companies that innovate, these are new startups, these are universities that become much more adaptive and entrepreneurial, and they're governmental organizations. But we need to flow resources to promising ideas, and that involves networks to support good ideas. Quality places is critically important because both the people and the organizations generally will leave. They'll go other places if they don't have quality connected places. And again, they can be bike shops, or they can be coffee shops, or they can be big incubator facilities. But the mistake is made oftentimes where, the build it, they will come, not necessarily. So you don't necessarily start out with quality places. Where you really start out, I think, in building ecosystems is creating a new narrative, creating a new story about where your economy is going. And as you do that, and on the right, what we did in North Alabama and in Charleston and in Milwaukee was create these collaborations across this ecosystem. So we have a portfolio of collaborations, each focused in these 4 areas. But why are people using strategic doing? Well, strategic doing is a discipline. It's an open source shared discipline that enables people to form action-oriented collaborations quickly, move them toward measurable outcomes, and make adjustments as they learn by doing. So let me go into that a little bit more detail. But first I want to emphasize, if you don't have a process, then you don't really know what you're doing. And that's so true. So what we focused on in our work at Purdue was developing a process that we could teach to teach people how to collaborate. So here's the logic of this process. First, we start out with the idea of what is a strategy in open, loosely connected network in an ecosystem. Well, a strategy is when a group of people are able to answer 2 questions. Where are we going and how will we get there? These 2 questions came to the top of the work that Kathleen Eisenhart was doing out in Stanford when she looked at very, very volatile environments, vibrant communities and companies. How did they design their strategies? Well, they designed their strategy around these 2 questions. In order for us in an ecosystem to answer those 2 questions, we have to have a strategic conversation. And so we define a strategic conversation around 4 questions. If you come into a workshop, you're going to be focused on these 4 questions. As you answer these 4 questions, you actually generate all the components you need for the strategy. Underlying this, why does this work? Underlying this, we see 10 rules. This is where the research and the practice meet, because each of these 10 rules is developed and has been developed and is supported by research. Now, we have to take all of that and we have to teach people. So this is what the purpose of our book was, and our training was, we have to teach people how to collaborate. So again, an open source discipline that we share. Purdue was instrumental in providing the discipline and the platform for us to develop this. And let me share with you the story of Ubaldo. So Ubaldo comes to Purdue, asks us what we could do. Ubaldo organized a group within his network of over 40 people from all across the Puerto Rican island. And we went through a 2.5-day training. And here's the training that we went through. And essentially what he was able to do was start to scale this discipline across the island very quickly. So it all started with a conversation between 2 people, Liz at Purdue and Ubaldo at the University of Puerto Rico. Those 2 recruited 6 of us to go down to the island to train people. We trained 40 people. Discipline right away. So part of the understanding, what you need to understand about strategy in open networks is that it's very quick, it's very fast. It's not this long, laborious process. So where did this come from? I talked to you a little bit about it. The history was 1993 to 2005. I was a private consultant. I developed the model based on open source software development. I came to Purdue and ran some test beds through 2019. We published the book, and now we're moving quickly to online education, and the University of North Alabama has provided us the platform to do online education. So now we do online education in this discipline, and we teach it in Spanish and Dutch, and we're teaching it down in Ecuador, and we're going to be teaching it in Australia and Canada as well.
So,
but let me bring you back to the original. Yeah.
Yeah, Ed, with that, we are running our sessions a little bit late, so I'm going to kind of help you wrap up a little bit. But the example that you just gave, and then the list of countries that you're present in, and the work that you've done in the past, I think really lends itself to this conference, international innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. And I know that as you've developed your process, it's gained a lot of attention and a lot of fans in many places, and I'm certainly one of them. So I want to thank you very much for coming virtually to this conference and giving us some exposure. I think we forget a little bit sometimes when we focus on the entrepreneur, but forget about the community that surrounds and nurtures those entrepreneurs. So thank you for your insights there. And I'm going to move on now with the program to Julie Lenzer. And Julie, I believe that you're on board.
I am.
Okay, hello, and it's good to see you. Julie's another longtime associate of mine and colleague. Julie was the first, I believe you launched the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration Office of Innovation.
Yeah, I didn't launch the office, but I launched our large grant program, the Regional Innovation Strategies.
That's right. The RIS, which lives and breathes to this day. So congratulations for that. And I was happy to learn that you were at the University of Maryland in charge of the Office of Innovation and successful there too. So we'd like to learn from you. So I'm going to turn the screen over to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to talk a little bit about my experience as building an ecosystem builder. I'm also an entrepreneur. So I built a company many years ago that provided software for manufacturing companies. So I am not an academic. I am a tried and true entrepreneur. I also, as was mentioned, I was a member of the Obama administration as the director of the Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and launched a grant program across the country where in the 2.5 years that I was there, we put out $40 million US into communities across the country, including the water cluster in Milwaukee, which I think was just mentioned. And that program has continued to grow since I left there at the change of the administration, and has been responsible for creating over 8,000 jobs and spurring over $1 billion in investment into startups. And so it's something, it's much like my child. I'm very proud of it, but it was also put in good hands with the team that I left in charge. So what I'm going to talk about is my experience. I've had every role in the ecosystem, I think now, but talking about how ecosystems can really accelerate innovation. And I do this from the standpoint of academia, as my current role is the Chief Innovation Officer at the University of Maryland. And but I can also throw in other aspects. As I said, I have been involved, I think, in every aspect of the ecosystem. So really, what let me see if I can, there it is. What is an ecosystem? What does this word mean? And the definition that I like to use is that it's a dynamic, self-regulating network of many different types of actors. So one of the important points of words in this definition is that it is self-regulating. It is very difficult for any government or other entity to control what happens in an ecosystem. What we do instead is that we are creating the conditions that people and programs and places can come together to support the startup, the entrepreneurial community. And it is dynamic because it relies on a lot of different pieces. So it is always changing and almost like a living, breathing organism. When I was with the U.S. Department of Commerce, I created what we will call the hierarchy of needs in resilient ecosystems and for economies. And what it really says is from the bottom, you have to have things at the bottom to be able to work your way up to the top. So on the very bottom, you have to have basic infrastructure that supports the businesses. So transportation, access to reliable electricity and utilities. Those are really required if you want to build a physical place to support business. On top of that then is the technology infrastructure. So making sure that everybody has access to cellular service, wireless and broadband, because today every business, even if it's a corner bakery, relies on technology in some way. And so, so looking at how your technology infrastructure supports your businesses is really important. Now, the business support, which is the next level, is around capital. What kind of capital is available to support your businesses? What policies are there? And we'll talk a little bit more about policies later. What types of programs are helping to accelerate or support these companies? And we'll talk about that as well. Engines of innovation are also really important because innovation is the driver of new businesses in many ways. Sometimes it's innovating around needs in the community. Universities are a great partner for this. We also have to have the right kinds of capital and policies to drive innovation. And then at the very top, the thing that you want to most strive for is this connected ecosystem. But in order to have all of that, you need everything else underneath it, at least to some degree. It doesn't all have, it's not necessarily all serial. It can be done in parallel, but all are required to support the structure of a responsive and resilient ecosystem. There's been a couple of other speakers who've talked about the elements of an ecosystem. There are many drawings that you can find of what are the pieces. This is just one of them. But the point is that there's a lot of things that are required. Remember the very first slide, I had talked about the diverse and interconnected pieces. And so there's a lot of things that have to come together to make a healthy ecosystem. But the entrepreneur actually is the thing that needs to be at the center of it, because that's what we're really trying to support. And many times I see policies or regulatory frameworks, or even the universities or training programs that don't keep the entrepreneur in the center. And that's a really crucial part of that, is you have to understand that's your customer. How are you supporting them? And how are you helping them to be successful? So understanding the domain in a typical university, and again, this is some of this is from the university perspective, and hopefully how you can support your universities. Our typical university state is often decentralized and distributed. So our assets that we have for entrepreneurship, some of them, we have the Dingman Center for Entrepreneurship that's in the College of Business. We have MTech, which is in the College of Engineering. We have something called a Do-Good Accelerator, which is in our College of Public Policy. And then my office is in the Vice Presidents for Research, and also dotted line to the President or Chancellor of our university. And so these things are very distributed, and my job is to make them all work together a little bit better than just having each individual on an island. Many universities are often under-resourced as well. And the assets that we have, we don't really own them by the university. We're trying to play as part of the community. And there's also a question about what are the incentives for people to collaborate, something to think about. Ideally, though, you want things that are completely interconnected. And I put the picture of those interconnected nodes on the bottom. It's a little confusing because that's really what